Although Inagate has not yet been launched, its legend has begun to spread across the sea. The most popular headline in the news this month is Mirror Fruit. When used by Ezekiel, this fruit could be called a fruit bestowed by God. People realize that this fruit, once got to be worthless, could be so powerful. Moreover, countless people now mock the Charlotte family for their blunder of allowing such a powerful fruit to fall into the hands of an enemy who uses it so effectively. However, no one could have imagined that the miracle of Taobao would be impossible without the mobile phone fruit as the platform and foundation. Even with many doors, one cannot dispense with the mobile phone fruit, because the reason the mirror fruit can accurately reach the desired door in all parts of the world is tied to the perfect coordinates provided by the navigation used on the mobile phone. Otherwise, how could you accurately find your destination just by relying on an eternal pose that would only point the direction? Therefore, Ezekiel was not worried that someone might rescue Brule. But others didn't know this. They regarded the phenomenon of Taobao as the merit of the mirror fruit. The world government even placed a bounty of 3 billion berries for capturing Charlotte Brule, but only for capturing her alive. Profit seekers were left only to infiltrate the Alabasta Desert Black Prison and free this woman from there. For Ezekiel, the development of the Inagate application was also something special. Everything he created before the forum, the news, TV, the ocean map, and even Taobao, these were all products belonging to Earth. But this magical Inagate application, created on the basis of a combination of the mobile phone fruit and the mirror fruit, is impossible on Earth. Even if it were put into scientific development, by all estimates in Ezekiel's past Earth it would not be possible to create such a miracle even after several hundred years of development. This thing can completely replace the existence of airplanes or even trains, and it is much better than them. But Ezekiel still did not abandon the research and development of trains or even airplanes, and invited many of the great masters from Water 7. Because although long-distance trains are not as convenient as Inagate, subways and light rail transport are undoubtedly more convenient for short-distance travel within the city. Mainly because there aren't many users of the mirror fruit's abilities, and there's no way to detail the map's coordinates to such an extent. After all, the map of this world is not based on satellites but on human resources. Ezekiel also does not want all developments to rely on the mirror world. He wants to create a modern, even ultra-modern Alabasta. All this is just the beginning. It was the spring of 1519 according to the sea calendar. If Ezekiel remembers correctly, there is still a year before Luffy and the original Mango will set out to sea. Ezekiel did not know what was happening with Vivi at the moment. Out of respect for his younger sister, he did not track her movements. He just occasionally monitored the whereabouts of Igrum, who had stayed on the island for a long time. "Your Majesty, the ceremony is about to begin," Fujitora reminded him. Ezekiel slowed his pace, smiled and nodded. Nami was already waiting impatiently. She grabbed Ezekiel by the hand and rushed forward to see the enormous stone building. It was shaped like a streamlined disc in the middle of the desert, surrounded by countless green plants, as if guarding the pearl of the desert. This is the Alabasta Inagate International Shuttle Station. This ultra-modern form is exactly what Ezekiel had described. An innumerable number of people had already gathered around the shuttle station, awaiting the arrival of His Majesty the King. So many applications had been developed, and before any of these applications emerged, people did not understand their essence. But now they were contemplating possible new changes in the transportation industry hinted at by the application's name Inagate. Therefore, when News and Ocean TV announced the release of Inagate, no one was surprised, but with great anticipation looked forward to experiencing this new mode of transportation and truly feeling the instantaneous movement. Dear viewers, we are broadcasting live. I am your big news Morgans. Morgans laughed, bringing his face close to the camera and trying to make an expression that he believed was very cute. In reality, people watching from their phones felt such disgust that they wanted to immediately move this ugly face away. Our beloved king has already appeared together with the chief of guards Fujitora and Dean Nami. Morgans turned the camera to Ezekiel and the others, showing them surrounded by security as they headed to the event. Morgans quickly shifted the camera and pulled out his mobile phone. Now let's see what most mobile phone users are saying on the forum. He opened the forum, where the top headline was currently the most popular. Who can get Morgans out of there? I'm paying 5,000 new dollars. Comments below. I'll add 500 inches. I'm paying 1,000 inches. I'll pay 10,000. Morgan silently put away his phone, then smiled and said to the camera, "Well, we can see the widespread eager anticipation for the demonstration of the shuttle and the Inagate app. This is not at all the case. Inagate or anything else is not important, we just want to get rid of you." Thus, for the first time in this world, the concept appeared crowdfunding, a collective collaboration of people who voluntarily pool their money or resources together to support the efforts of other people or organizations. 36 enormous mirrors were installed at the newly constructed transportation station outside the capital of Alabasta. These feature the latest tempered glass mirrors developed by the Academy of Sciences, which possess high impact resistance and will not accidentally shatter. Each mirror measures 10 meters in width and 10 meters in height, allowing for the passage of large people and goods, considering that sometimes there are enormous individuals in this world. Ezekiel himself set the routes, and the initial test included 36 routes. Routes 1 to 34 lead from all major cities in the country to Arum, making it usable as a transit route for the shuttle to these 34 cities at will. The 35th gate is located in Arum, the new city headquarters of the Royal Fleet, and the 36th leads to East Blue. It's worth mentioning that in East Blue, there is a trading island, one of the 3 islands originally requested by Robin and Zalol. This is the island where the village of Kokoyasi is located. The other 2 are, one near Water 7, and another in the distant New World. New King of Alabasta opens the door across the sea. East Blue needs only to open 2 doors to reach the Grand Line. Pirate, can you reach the Grand Line through Inagate? Marshal Zephyr, only over my dead body. How safe is Inagate? You don't need to drift across the sea, you can reach your destination instantly. Stunning news once again spread across the world. If Taobao was said to have had a strong impact on the sea, then the emergence of Inagate is simply unbelievable. However, ordinary people were not able to understand Taobao immediately. In contrast, Inagate, which allows for spatial travel, is more comprehensible for people in the pirate world. Because this is a world of wonders with devil fruits. What's strange about such a marvel is that in the past, no one used devil fruits not as a combat tool but as a means to improve life. In any case, the appearance of the Inagate app caused a sensation at sea, and it also drove the emperor of the criminal underworld, Amit, mad, even though it only opened 3 routes from Alabasta to East Blue, Water 7 and the New World. But the losses in Umit's maritime industry were already noticeable. Just this month his losses grew to 30%. This is absolutely unbearable for him, so he set a bounty on Ezekiel from 1 billion to 2 billion. Depending on alive or dead. Meanwhile, Big Mom is seeking ways to get revenge on her opponent. The world government can only compromise and pray that Ezekiel does not develop a new line of shuttles. Although their prayers were actually useful, because for a short time Ezekiel indeed hesitated to develop a new line of shuttles. If he continues to do so, God knows where the enemy will come from. This time Ezekiel finally decided to include the development of virtual games. Soldiers need a strong physique, power, order, and combat experience. Ezekiel can easily give them strength, and they will gain combat experience over time. But what is the most powerful advantage of virtual games? They can simulate a real battlefield, because a soldier cannot become a seasoned veteran without participating in battles. Moreover, activating the game will bring in a large number of players, but it will also help him filter out those who are not suited for military service. It took him a long time to develop the right application with accessible controls. Sitting on the sofa in the hall, Ezekiel closed his eyes. It seemed that countless lights flashed in the depths of his eyes, and the numbers 0 and 1 formed lines. Finally, Ezekiel slowly opened his eyes and saw a white space. This was a virtual world. He moved his hands and feet, feeling with all 5 senses, almost indistinguishable from the real world. He activated Observation Haki and even Conqueror's Haki to ensure that this world could reflect real reactions. This is because he can use abilities recorded in the game template, which contains all his own data. But if he were asked to simulate fruit abilities that he doesn't possess, like Op no Mi, Burger no Mi, and so forth, he will not be able to use them like a user in the real world. Similarly, anyone who enters the game world will automatically input the data template of their body into the virtual template, and in this world, they will be able to use the same power as in the real world. A flower appeared in Ezekiel's hand, slowly blooming under his gaze, and Ezekiel sighed lightly. The flower emitted a gentle fragrance. Everything was 100 times better than he imagined. This level is just a basic virtual template. He didn't know until the fruit ability sent a message about the basic virtual game template. This world has boundaries, only about 20 kilometers. But that's enough. Although it seems like a small area, quite a few people can be accommodated here. It's city-sized. Housing hundreds of thousands of people here is not a problem. It's not for living but for training. In addition to absolute real simulation, the world can also maintain a time ratio of 1 to 2 with the outside world. That means 2 hours here or only 1 hour outside. Ezekiel immediately contacted Zephyr and gave him the authority to freely enter the game world and control it. At this time, Zephyr was suffering from routine office work when he received a call from Ezekiel. "Marshal Zephyr, please check if there's an app called Training Camp on your phone and click on it." When Zephyr heard these words, he turned on his phone and opened Training Camp. Before him it was dark, and he suddenly felt a huge change in his body. In the blink of an eye, he reached a strange place that somewhat resembled a forest, and in front of him stood Ezekiel, smiling at him. What is this devil fruit ability? Zephyr felt that he could leave this world at any time and return to where he originally was, and he also knew that this was not his real body, although his spirit had entered this space, because as soon as he activated Observation Haki, he was able to perceive the surrounding situation. What an outrageous fruit. Zephyr was not supposed to panic. After listening to Ezekiel's explanation of the virtual world, Zephyr was shocked. Create a world between false and real for training soldiers. As thinking changes, so does the world. Zephyr looked at the sky and the earth, which changed as freely as his gods, and opened his mouth in shock. What excited Zephyr even more was that he could freely create enemies in the virtual world. Although the intelligence of these enemies seemed to be inferior to that of normal people, this would aid in training the recruits. Thinking about this, a satisfied Zephyr smiled. One day later, the soldiers gathered by Zephyr appeared in this unfamiliar world. It took significant effort for the soldiers to understand the concept of a virtual world. The crystal tower stands on a vast square. Zephyr stood before the tower, speaking with the soldiers. "Soldiers, this will be your new training ground. You don't need to worry about dying or getting injured here. Moreover, time flows twice as slowly here as it does in the outside world. Your task is to guard this crystal tower." "Yes, sir," the soldiers shouted loudly. There were about 1,000 soldiers, including Tashiti and Smoker, who was, as usual, with a stony face smoking a cigar. Although His Highness Ezekiel's abilities are always so novel, he is hardly surprised anymore. Seeing their enthusiasm, Zephyr smiled. People who suddenly gain power will waste it if they don't have equivalent combat experience. Soon, Zephyr disappeared, and a huge countdown appeared in the sky. 10, 9, 8, 1. As the signal sounded, Smoker's cigar ash fell to the ground, and he looked shocked into the distance, where a portly giant was slowly approaching. Looking like a ghost, long hair, and a dragon scale tattoo on his left arm. Emperor Kato. Not only Emperor Kato, but also the 3 stars of the Beast Pirates. They roared and charged forward, as if they had gone mad. The soldiers didn't react, they were stunned. Many were torn apart. Impact. Smoker barely blocked Kato's assault, but he fell. This guy seems smarter, and his attack method is vaguely familiar. "What are you staring at, you bastard?" Kato sneered, punching Smoker and slamming his head into the ground, crushing it. Smoker turned into smoke. Though this fighting style closely resembled Kato's, it still reminded him of someone else. In the end, it was too late to think about it, so he had to focus on the battle. Only Ezekiel, who was observing the first military training, knew that the Kato everyone saw on the outside was actually the beloved Zephyr. Zephyr, in the guise of Kato, constantly smiled. Boom. Impact. Although they were told that none of this was real, in the face of a situation that almost perfectly matched reality, who could say whether they should truly be afraid? Damn it. I'm going to become a warrior of the king. A passionate young man, who had just joined the royal fleet, shouted and rushed at Cato. Boom! A terrifying club struck down, and the young man was immediately reduced to a heap of minced meat. A heavy figure stood before everyone, looked at them with a smirking smile, and said, "Did he say something about the king? In this sea, there is only one king, His Majesty Ezekiel. It was he who solved the problem of training the soldiers and even participated in the training himself." After all, the issue of insufficient combat experience had been troubling him for a long time. During the training, he was accompanied by none other than Rayleigh. Considering the double training time, even with the need to attend to state affairs, he still had free time each day for battle preparation. Ezekiel and Rayleigh fought on a huge platform. Nami and Robin sat on lounge chairs, wearing sunglasses and basking in the sun. Since the virtual world can freely adjust the weather, the climate here is always ideal. The battle between Ezekiel and Rayleigh was impressive to them. "I'm already strong, do we really need to train that much?" said Nami in a swimsuit. "For men it's never enough," Robin said meaningfully, smiling with a book in her hands. Nami's face turned red. Right now, she's under 18 and can't compete with Robin like she might in 2 or 3 years. Coughing, she asked, "Do you like Ezekiel?" Robin smiled and didn't respond to her words. Ezekiel and Rayleigh parted after another clash. The battle was over. "Your Majesty, you're learning quickly," Rayleigh said. Ezekiel put away the light sword, exhaled and smiled. "It's not easy. The guys out there at sea are as strong as monsters. Enemies are watching him, ready to strike a fatal blow at any moment." Taking a juice from Nami, Ezekiel asked Rayleigh, "Are you there yet?" "Almost there. Things have changed a lot here," Rayleigh replied. In reality, while he was in the virtual world, he was actually in a distant sea. Ezekiel had told him about a place above this sea known as Sky Island. Although he didn't need to be told, Rayleigh also knew the place because he had been there with Roger decades ago. Now, it could be considered a return. Ezekiel had tasked him with reaching Sky Island and finding a large enough mirror there. Ezekiel wanted to talk with the inhabitants of Sky Island on behalf of Alabasta about the issue of peace. Once the military strength of Zephyr's forces is guaranteed, and the basic viability of Alabasta's people is established, Ezekiel's next step should be a new 5-year development plan aimed at improving people's lives. But 5 years is too long. He wants to complete it in just 1 year, and for that, he must rely on the power of the devil fruit. There are many valuable things Ezekiel wants to acquire on Sky Island, such as various shells, fire swords, flash pistols, a cloud cutter, and so on. More importantly, the thunder fruit, because Ezekiel's country has had a perpetual headache due to its energy system. Although Ezekiel's mobile phones do not require electricity, it is impossible to develop industry without it. Currently, in Alabasta, there isn't even an electric lamp, and they still use kerosene lamps. How can a country that the world calls a super kingdom be so impoverished? Furthermore, the Academy of Sciences has developed things like refrigerators, washing machines, air conditioners, and various electrical appliances, but there is still not enough electricity to power it all. Building that many power plants under normal circumstances would take no less than 10 years, but the ability of the thunder fruit is a walking power station in itself. Alabasta only needs to provide a sufficiently large battery, so there is someone who is most suited for the position of Director of the National Energy Agency of Alabasta. This individual is the possessor of the Goro Goro no Mi's abilities. Ezekiel was not concerned whether Enel would agree or not. That is a matter for Rayleigh to resolve. At the very least, he should ensure Ezekiel has the opportunity to obtain the power of the Goro Goro no Mi. The appearance of Inagate also solved Ezekiel's transportation issues. Once Enel has a mobile phone, Ezekiel will be able to communicate with him through the mirror fruit. Thus, the world government and other enemies have absolutely no opportunity to get rid of him. As long as Rayleigh is near Sky Island, it means that Alabasta's elite combat power can be deployed there at any time. In reality, the waters of this world are deeper than one can imagine. This applies to science and technology. Not only does Vegapunk claim to possess technology that surpasses this world by 500 years, but there are also many different ordinary scientists in the private sector. Simply put, from a technological perspective, the world simply doesn't utilize them. For example, most of what exists on Earth, planes, trains, cars, electric lighting, even televisions, radios and VCRs can find substitutes here and might only exist in this world. But this is a world where technology hasn't followed the path of scientific advancement. What's the reason? Imagine that hundreds of years ago, when armed forces with powerful technology came to Alabasta, they were defeated by Alabasta fighters of unmatched strength. Who could understand the power of technology and the necessity of its development? The so-called laggards will be defeated. And it's precisely because science and technology don't show real power that people in this world disdain them. But Ezekiel believes that there is no conflict between the development of science and technology and the development of this world's strength. These two methods can be combined. The power of devil fruits can be used to facilitate the progress of science and technology, while the power of science and technology can also be greatly enhanced by devil fruits. In fact, in the whole world government, Vegapunk is the person Ezekiel most wants to bring to his side. To be honest, Ezekiel is very interested in things like artificial devil fruits. Looking at the later beast pirates of Cato, don't the numbers look appealing? At least the direction of research and development of this technology is correct. Just then, when Ezekiel was waiting for the opportunity to go to Sky Island, in the distant sea, on an ordinary island, pirates gathered here just to discuss how to infiltrate Alabasta and create chaos. Now, Alabasta is the most tempting prize in the eyes of all the pirates. Individual pirate crews cannot afford to attack such a super kingdom, but when countless pirates unite, they dare to assault even the entire marine headquarters. Moreover, they don't want to attack Alabasta, they just want to see if they can acquire the power of the mirror fruit Charlotte Brûlée. Goods worth tens of billions of bully have been sent to the mirror world. Once we capture Charlotte Brûlée, all of that will be ours. They believe that all of Alabasta's goods were hidden in the same mirror world. But in reality, each person with the mirror fruit ability has a world that is not connected to others, and there is more than one person with the mirror fruit ability. These pirates were gathered by the emperor of the criminal underworld, Amit, who promised that anyone who removed Vils Taobao would be rewarded with 3 billion bully. We can pretend to be merchants and enter Willport, then head straight to Aruma through Alubarna and finally enter the desert kingdom. The whole process won't take a day. But we need to enter in groups, a pirate said with a grin. A girl with long blue hair tied in a ponytail, dressed like a rebel, wearing sunglasses, sat aside. Next to her was a curly-haired man. She quietly said, "Igram, we need to tell my brother." "Quiet, Your Royal Highness. Let's wait until we leave," Igram whispered to her immediately. But there were so many people here, and no one paid attention to the subdued conversation between these two. It seemed that no one noticed anything. But next to them sat a man whose entire body was hidden by a cloak. It seemed he had overheard their conversation, and his hand, holding a trident-like weapon, tensed. A pirate approached. "Vivi. Hey, miss, you're not a pirate." The hefty bald giant, reeking of an awful stench, leered as he reached out to touch Vivi. "Stop." Igram grabbed the hilt of his sword, but before he could draw it, the giant knocked him straight to the ground with a single blow. Blue veins bulged on his head as he seized Vivi by the hand and yanked her from her seat. She was powerless to resist. As he looked at Vivi more closely, the man was momentarily stunned, then cried out in ecstasy. "Are you all blind? Do you see who I've caught?" Everyone shifted their gaze, and when they closely examined Vivi's appearance, shock suddenly appeared on their faces. They hurriedly referenced the photograph of the Alabasta royal family member in the information provided by Amit. "This is the sister of the King of Alabasta, the princess of the royal family." The bald giant laughed, not expecting to be so lucky. "Your Royal Highness, what do you think of the people who have gathered here today? We're all discussing what to do about your brother. I didn't expect you to take the initiative and show up at our door. Your brother is King Ezekiel." Vivi was truly frightened. She hadn't anticipated being recognized so easily, mainly because her thinking was still stuck in the past. Now that the sea has mobile phones, the flow of information is faster than ever, and there are no people who don't know the famous Vilsis, and of course, information about all his relatives is widely spread. "Put her in the iron cage," someone shouted. At that moment, Vivi suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of oppression and everyone around her began to collapse unconscious, including Igrum. The man who was holding him also suddenly fell. Circles of black and red light emanated from the mysterious person next to her. He slowly removed his coat, revealing short dark purple hair and a grim face, his mouth covered with a large scarf. "You, Princess of Alabasta," it wasn't so much a question as a statement. "No." Vivi denied it. "Sister of Ezekiel Nefertari," the man's expression turned fierce, making Vivi even more frightened. "I advise you to calm down." Vivi was terrified. She just wanted to help her brother. She didn't want to return to Alabasta in such a desperate way. She didn't expect to be recognized. "Is that the sister of that man?" "Compared to my sisters, she is very different." Chatgtp was slightly disappointed, his eyes fixed on the panicking Vivi. His conqueror's haki knocked her out too. Chatgtp discarded Vivi's mobile phone and smashed all the mirrors, then carried her out of the bar. "Ezekiel, you caught my sister, and I caught yours. Ezekiel Nefertari, I will never allow anyone to intimidate my sister." Ezekiel had no way of tracking 80 million mobile phone users simultaneously. It was only a day later that he noticed Igrum and Vivi were in a dangerous situation. By habit, he checked Igrum's location and saw that he seemed to be locked in some dungeon with no trace of Vivi nearby. Overhearing nearby conversations, he learned what had happened. After being discovered, Vivi mysteriously disappeared. Ezekiel immediately began searching but found no trace of Vivi. He promptly notified Zephyr and asked him to deploy the royal fleet to rescue Igrum and find clues about Vivi. Additionally, he informed Nami and asked her to pay attention to the movements of certain powerful individuals using the ocean chart. Through monitoring, he discovered that neither Daffy nor anyone else appeared to be taking any active measures. A pirate ship with the Jolly Roger on the flag slowly appeared before the shoreline of Alabasta. "That's Big Mom's pirate ship. One of the 4 emperors is approaching," someone said in horror. "Are you crazy? This area is under the protection of the Sea Kings, they couldn't have broken through." Someone else said indifferently. "No ship with a pirate flag can enter this marine area, so pirates only infiltrate Alabasta using disguise, and pirates of the 4 emperors' caliber are unlikely to manage such stealth." And indeed, a terrifying monster erupted from the seabed along the shoreline. A massive splash flung the pirate ship far to the side. Yet, for some inexplicable reason, the Sea Kings hesitated to attack the ship. "You bastard! Let me go." Vivi desperately struggled as Chatgtp held her wrist. People on the shore were shocked that the Sea Kings didn't attack the pirate ship. They frantically fled to the city in a panic, so by the time the 2 of them reached the shore, no one was there. Chatgtp didn't respond to her. He calmly surveyed the empty street before finally releasing Vivi and saying indifferently, "You are free." Vivi remained standing in place. After a whole day of interaction, this man turned out to be far less terrifying than she had imagined, and she no longer felt as much fear toward Chatgtp. "What do you mean? Are you crazy?" She didn't understand and even caught up with Chatgtp to make sure she had indeed heard him correctly. He let her go when they arrived in Alabasta. Is he relying on his own strength against this country? Chatgtp ignored the anxious woman. At that moment, a woman ran out of the mirror glass in front of them. She had a witch-like face, a long nose and an ugly scar. This was Charlotte Brûlé, with her mirror fruit ability. "Brother Chatgtp." Charlotte Brûlé burst into tears as soon as she saw Chatgtp and desperately rushed to him, as if she had suddenly found support. "Return first," Chatgtp said. "Brother. Let's leave together. We won't be able to escape when they arrive." Brûlé was terrified, referring to Isso and Ezekiel. She grabbed Chatgtp's hand and tried to pull him away. "They're already here," Chatgtp said coldly, looking ahead. A terrifying force of gravity descended, causing Chatgtp's body to sink into the ground, and he saw Ezekiel and the blind warrior emerging from the mirror. "Charlotte." Chatgtp, Ezekiel said, observing the situation. Chatgtp looked at Ezekiel and said nothing, his expression slightly cold and intimidating. His fists were clenched tightly, as if ready to explode with rage at any moment. Meanwhile, Isso smiled and slowly sheathed his sword. Boom. The pressure intensified again. "Brother. Vivi approached Ezekiel and cast a complex look at Chatgtp. This man. He's actually strange. What's he planning? Vivi, go home in. Ezekiel smiled and patted her shoulder. Leave everything to me. Vivi hesitated for a moment but decided to obey her brother's command. She entered the mirror world, surrounded by numerous soldiers assigned to her, but she glanced back at Chatgtp. Chatgtp was staring intently at Ezekiel while Isso smiled and furrowed his brow, understanding the situation before him. Now that Ezekiel had returned Charlotte Brûlée, Isso was convinced that His Majesty will already understood the nature of this man. Chatgtp had captured Vivi but hadn't handed her over to the Charlotte family, because Chatgtp knew that due to his mother's nature, even if they returned Brûlée, they might still kill Vivi. Or they could enter Alabasta, threatening Vivi, and things would not go well for Brûlée. There was only one way to retrieve Charlotte Brûlée: return Vivi to Alabasta himself. He placed his bet on Ezekiel as the true king. I will return your sister to you if you return mine to me. This is a one-time deal. Ezekiel Nefertari, king ruling over more than 220 million people, do you possess royal dignity? Chatgtp's life was on the line. If Ezekiel lacked dignity, Chatgtp would undoubtedly die, and Brûlée would not be saved. If the gamble succeeded, they both could leave peacefully. Of course Ezekiel understood these thoughts of Chatgtp, or else he wouldn't have released Charlotte Brûlée. Neither of them spoke another word, but they looked each other in the eye and had clearly reached an agreement. You Chatgtp, dare to make a bet with me where your fate is at stake, and I, Ezekiel, will naturally meet you halfway and willingly let go of Charlotte Brûlée. But Isso was wary of such a deal. If they release someone with the mirror fruit ability, then Big Mom could reach Alabasta anywhere through Charlotte Brûlée. Just imagine, could Alabasta withstand it? This isn't even about strength, but simply about uncontrollable spontaneity. So, Isso continued to intensify the gravity. But suddenly, a hand grabbed Fujitora by the elbow, and Ezekiel slowly spoke. Isso, let them go. Isso let out a long sigh and finally sheathed his sword. As soon as the gravitational force decreased, Chatgtp and Ezekiel looked at each other once more, and then, without saying a word, Chatgtp grabbed Brûlée and headed toward the ship. The Sea Kings made way for them. This was the will of the king. Is this really the right thing to do? Asked Isso. Since he risked his life to test me as a king, how could I ignore his challenge? Ezekiel smiled. Then we'll just trust him, said Fujitora. We can only hope that Chatgtp possesses the same will and dignity as Ezekiel. And it's not only Chatgtp who is gambling, but Ezekiel too. He bets that the other side will release his sister. Another bet that the opponent won't return to the Big Mom pirates. And indeed, in less than 3 days, 2 pieces of news spread across the sea. Chatgtp from Big Mom's pirate crew exchanged Princess Vivi for Charlotte Brûlée. Chatgtp did not return to the Big Mom pirates. Charlotte Brûlée was indeed taken by Chatgtp, but he did not return to Big Mom. When Vivi heard this news, she rushed to Ezekiel. Ezekiel was attending to official duties. Isso was napping on the side, looking calm and serene. Brother, why did that guy do such a thing? It's too strange, Vivi asked. Ezekiel smiled and did not answer his sister. In this ocean, there are too many strange things. And there are things that are extremely valuable and unbreakable. In the calm sea, Chatgtp slowly pulled down the pirate flag of Emperor Big Mom, and now sat silently on the deck holding it. Charlotte Brûlée watched him with concern. It had been 7 days since they left Alabasta, but her brother was still making a decision. Mom will kill us, brother Chatgtp, she said. Chatgtp looked at her calmly. He was usually cold and composed, and it was the first time he spoke so much. As long as I'm protecting you, our mother won't do anything to you. Your fruit ability is needed by our mother. It's all my fault. I'm your brother and I should protect my sister properly, but, Brûlée, I can't let you go back now. Brother. I won't let our mother kill you. With my ability, you can go wherever you want, Charlotte Brûlée said firmly. When the news spreads across the sea, Big Mom will surely pursue Chatgtp with the intention to kill him. After all, he betrayed one of the 4 emperors, which is unacceptable. And now, thanks to Brûlée's ability, it will be very easy for their enemies to capture them. In any case, easier than for Big Mom to directly invade Alabasta. In any case, it is an incredible event that the mirror fruit revered by gods is freely adrift in the sea. To find this strategic weapon, the mirror fruit, not only Big Mom, but also other powerful pirates will take action. At this moment, the mirror on the mast changed its color. A girl with long blue hair emerged from the mirror. Chatgtp and Brule turned their heads, and Brule was shocked. You woman. How did you get here? To be honest, Brule actually didn't want to provoke the Nefertari family. Even if she left the Charlotte family, she didn't want to provoke that terrifying person, and the woman before her was the sister of that person, Her Royal Highness Princess of Alabasta Vivi. Chatgtp's eyes were stern as they looked at Vivi. Honestly, he had no reason to harm this girl. After all, he had an unspoken agreement with the king not to return to Big Mom's pirate crew. Do you need a navigator? Vivi smiled and shook the phone in her hand. She knew that Chatgtp had lost his phone. In the palace, Fujitora continued to sleep while Nami was eating oranges and chatting with Robin, who was reading a book. A man with the ability of the mirror fruit appeared in a special mirror passage in the main hall and respectfully bowed to Ezekiel from the mirror. Your Majesty, according to your instructions, Princess Vivi was granted permission to enter and exit the mirror world. She did exactly as you got and went to Chatgtp's ship. At this moment, several people froze. Your Majesty, is this really right? Vivi is just a child, said Robin. That guy caught Vivi, so his mind is really off kilter. Why would she go back? Nami's reaction was quite intense, you could say she was shocked. In her view, although Chatgtp hadn't returned to Big Mom's side, he was clearly an enemy of Alabasta. It doesn't matter. From the moment he made his choice, he's no longer a real enemy. Of course, Ezekiel knew about Vivi's decision, and he wouldn't force her to return. Chatgtp is someone you can trust. Since he made his decision, he won't regret it, even if Vivi appears before him again. Moreover, he will do everything possible to protect Vivi. With such a strong person by her side to protect her, Vivi can also do a lot of training. If she actually encounters insurmountable danger, she can escape thanks to Brule's ability. Why would he need to bring Vivi back? He's the perfect partner for Vivi right now. Finally, the time has come. The cell phone fruit has made another breakthrough. Ezekiel always believed that the cell phone fruit would definitely have the highest capabilities. Even though the ability to download other fruits already defies the heavens. But before this, it seemed that its development was very limited. Ezekiel was waiting for a qualitative change in his fruit, and this update for 100 million users, in his opinion, is that qualitative change. Number of current users, 100 million. Cell phone memory, 940 GB / 1200 GB. With the 4G network function. Download speed, 5 MB/sec. Download distance, 300 kilometers. Transition from initial level virtual game development to advanced virtual game development achieved, expanding the game space to 100 kilometers. New functions opened. Download deletion function. All creatures are equal elementary level. The updates met Ezekiel's expectations, and the download deletion function wasn't unexpected. However, this new all creatures are equal function puzzled him a bit. The names displayed by the cell phone fruit come from his subconscious, meaning his subconscious named this function all creatures are equal. But what is this function? Thanks to the updated information after the breakthrough of the cell phone fruit, Ezekiel finally learned what all creatures are equal means, and he couldn't help but be shocked. In the world, there are talented individuals and incompetents. Incompetents account for 99%. This means that strong people at the level of an admiral became such not only through hard work, but also due to their potential. With talent, they made efforts to achieve what they are today. This reflects the limit of maximum memory capacity on cell phones. Fujitora has 300 GB, while ordinary people might have only 1 or 2 GB. And this is a big problem that concerns Ezekiel at present. If there are enough people from Alabasta with a potential memory of 100 GB, he will create an army of freezing fruit or light fruit users. And can't he push the world? In reality, it turned out that 99% of Alabasta's residents have only 1 GB. All creatures are equal means that the cell phone, created by the cell phone fruit, is used as a medium. Upon contracting with the user, it transfers talent to them so they can possess power. Is it something like Warrior of the Fire Mist? Ezekiel recalled an anime he watched in his past life. All creatures are equal at the elementary level can grant the user an additional talent limit of 10 gigabytes. An additional talent limit of 10 gigabytes is provided. For users with the power of a devil fruit, this is a crucial element, and considering its strength, it can be utilized at any time. A weak man wielding the power of a devil fruit won't be able to control it at all unless he receives an additional limit. Otherwise, it will lead to an outburst of power within the body, and ultimately, the weak man will die. Therefore, it's necessary to increase the limit first, before acquiring the fruit's ability. And once all people are given equal power, all life and death will be controlled by will. This is the price that a mortal must bear to gain power. However, if a person has enough talent like an admiral's 300 gigabytes, and is forced to use power for 310 gigabytes, the damage to him may be very limited unless it exceeds 350 gigabytes, and especially 400 gigabytes. Nevertheless, Ezekiel noticed the words elementary level, which means that the ability all creatures are equal can still be improved. Although even if it couldn't be improved, Ezekiel would still be very satisfied. What can you do with 10 gigabytes? Elementary armament haki and observation haki require only 5 gigabytes. Advanced armament haki and observation haki require 10 gigabytes. An advanced ability of a common devil fruit uses 10 gigabytes, while elementary usage requires only 5 gigabytes. The most common capacity of an average soldier is even less than 1 gigabyte. A rear admiral of the Marine Patrol, possessing Rokushki, has 10 gigabytes. For starters, let everyone have elementary armament haki. Next, as possible, all users of his mobile phones will be able to learn advanced armament haki, the elementary level of devil fruit ability, plus a set of advanced physical skills. After all, ordinary people with a potential of 1 gigabyte are capable of mastering advanced physical skills. And then Ezekiel had a brilliant idea. Maybe I can use a game for this. Ezekiel smiled. So, a player could gain power within the game and simultaneously in reality? After all, it's unrealistic to empower individuals one by one. Just the army of Alabasta numbers over 600,000 people. Adding local officials, there are about 1 million people. But they could complete game tasks according to the settings in the game, and in the end, automatically upload their ability, with Ezekiel only needing to give permission. However, this world does not understand the concept of virtual games. If you want people to accept this concept, you must first pave many roads. After all, except for soldiers who were ordered, no one would dare to enter a virtual world without knowing anything about it. Such games were too alien to this world. First, it's necessary to develop a game series and establish several basic games for mobile phones so people can gradually understand the concept of virtual games. This is the right path. Thinking about this, Ezekiel immediately created a game app on his mobile phone where people can download various small games, which also promotes the concept of downloading. As for the games themselves, there weren't that many, primarily the simplest ones like Tetris, now known as Alabasta Cube, Snake, and Chess. More advanced games will be added gradually in the future. Ezekiel smiled. He really needed Vegapunk. Fulfilling the requirements of the world government, Vegapunk created the mobile phone and continues to optimize its function. Upon seeing the latest app, Vegapunk will develop something similar. It's relatively simple. And maybe in the future the guy will write an excellent program. Ezekiel definitely needs to get in touch with him. After all, Vegapunk is the only programmer in this world. A scientist who has been leading the world in science and technology for the past 500 years. Studying a few games will clearly delay him and the world government, which also means that the overall progress of the world government's active measures against Alabasta has been postponed. He could monitor the world government at any time. After the vivid lesson with Taobao, this time when the mobile game app appeared, it caught the attention of the 5 elders. Alabasta Cube. Although it's a game, it's enough to see that Alabasta's goal is to strengthen the country's unity, said the elder with the sword. Snake. Does Alabasta intend to consume the world government? Added another elder. Although it looks like mere entertainment, we cannot fall behind. We have ordered Vegapunk to stop all other research and develop the same games, inserted yet another elder. But maybe there's something more important. Someone hesitated. Do you want a repeat of the Taobao situation? Another immediately countered. This made everyone fall silent. Although the Justice mobile phones are absolutely inferior to the Alabasta Royal mobile phones, they relied on the powerful world government channels, especially now that signal towers are being gradually installed and becoming more powerful. With communication range at least within one country, there are no issues. Ordinary people generally do not need to travel abroad, so some will purchase such phones. Sales have already reached 30 million. When the Alabasta Royal Mobile released a game app, it significantly delayed Vegapunk's research progress. Currently, it can be said that Vegapunk has completely set aside all research aspects. After all, it takes Ezekiel just a moment to develop something, and very little time for research and improvement. No matter how smart Vegapunk is, reaching Will's level of efficiency is impossible. However, the world government did not want to repeat the mistakes they made with Taobao. They thought it was a useless app. But after seeing Taobao's success, the envious world government also created their own Taobao, but their version could only operate in individual countries since it was difficult to ensure similar delivery worldwide. This demanded a lot of manpower and resources, not to mention poor results, and there were often problems with damage and returns. It was utterly incomparable to Alabasta Royal Mobile, which had the power of the mirror fruit. So, the startled world government offered 1 billion berries reward for the capture of Brule. Thus just a few days later, Ezekiel saw the news that mobile games were also available on Justice mobile phones. Snake without music. What on earth is the world government doing? Ezekiel's expression turned surprised. They really forgot about Taobao. In truth, he wasn't too concerned about the games, he just needed to popularize the concept. If people could accept it, it would be easier for Ezekiel to use all creatures are equal. He might even gift these games to the world government. However, seeing that the sales volume of the Justice mobile phones was nearing 40 million, he remained vigilant. His business partners, with their own shareholders, supported a large sales volume worldwide. If not for the popularity of the Alabasta Royal mobile phones, the Justice mobile phones wouldn't have sold at all. Some strange news on the forum caught Ezekiel's attention. Goa phone, made by the Kingdom of Goa in East Blue, costs only 1,000 berries, but its communication distance is less than 5 kilometers. Dressrosa launches a barrier-free global signal transfer mode for the Yasha mobile phone Flamingo Tau 15 app available online. In the land of giants, super giant mobile phones have appeared. The Longarms claim that their mobile phone is the most suitable for them. Island of Kuja uses the Alabasta Royal mobile phone. Ezekiel's eyelids twitched, and he wanted to kill his intelligence expert. Hell, why didn't he know these phones were connecting to his internet network? But in any case, the quality of the Alabasta Royal mobile phone surpasses the rest. They are incomparable to other mobile phones. Even the Justice mobile phone has only 40 million sales, while the Alabasta Royal mobile has already surpassed 100 million. Pell reported to Ezekiel about the Justice mobile phone sales volumes, while the sales of other phones were just a few million, which he thought wasn't worth mentioning. But Ezekiel knows that these phones are actually prototypes for the Justice mobile phones because their technology clearly comes from the world government, and it's just a rebranding. They are real competitors and have a huge advantage, but only in their own countries. The look of the administrative hall had completely changed by this time. It was equipped not only with electric lighting and air conditioners but even with an extra-large mobile phone on the wall, designed by Ezekiel. This mobile phone is almost like a television. Ezekiel plans to launch it into production soon, but there are still too few TV shows. At this time, a cool breeze blew from the air conditioner, and the electricity was entirely dependent on a set of generators newly developed by the Academy of Sciences. Throughout the hall, Nami, dressed lightly, was humming. As usual, Fujitara sat off to the side with a sword in hand resting, while Morgan's news broadcasted on the TV. These were reports about other mobile phones being sold at reduced prices. Justice mobile phones are really pathetic. But they've dropped the price from 4,000 berries to 3,000 berries. Are we going to lower our price? How much will the phone cost? Nami said angrily. The price reduction is related to the expanded research and development of mobile phones, which are currently being mass-produced. Not only will we not lower the price, but we'll increase it, Will said calmly. Nami and Fujitaro were stunned. Nami stood by Ezekiel's desk, leaned over, and placed her palm on his forehead. Have you lost your mind? Are you sick? Ezekiel took her slightly cold hand and smiled helplessly. I'm not sick. Is that a new dress? Nami pouted and withdrew her hand, then turned and headed out of the hall. I don't care, go to Kaya and sort it out yourselves. Nami's face was flushed, the sun illuminated it, and her skin was crystal clear and translucent, revealing an unprecedented beauty. Even the old blind man couldn't help but smile, then turned to the calm Ezekiel. Your Majesty, I'm blind, but you are not. According to the law of Alabasta, a man becomes an adult at 18. Ezekiel did not lift his eyes. Now that the Alabasta Royal Mobile has become the overarching trend, people realize that it's the true mobile phone and other phones are just unsuccessful imitations. Therefore, Ezekiel will not only raise the price but also open exclusive stores in the mirror world across the globe. What good is it that they just lowered the price? Due to large-scale investments and demand stimulation on Taobao, the per capita income in Alabasta has reached a very high level, almost several times the previous level. Moreover, thanks to Alabasta's development, the global economy has actually improved significantly, mainly because countless Taobao stores experienced a constant turnover of millions of berries, and an incredible number of jobs were created. Now that people around the world are wealthy, will they care about 1,000 berries difference in price? 10,000 berries, which is $1,000 new, is hardly considered money today in the eyes of many people. You world government, do not conduct any economic research. When people lack no money, they won't choose to save instead. They will pay more attention to quality. Ezekiel had previously considered raising the price, but he didn't expect the world government to lower their price. This can be considered a great help because genuinely poor people will be able to buy mobile phones. Let these people learn the concept of mobile phones, this will expand the market, and then we just have to wait for the poor to become wealthy and want to acquire a real phone by choosing the more advanced Alabasta Royal Mobile. This is absolutely realistic. At this time, one of the 4 emperors, Big Mom, found out that Chatgtp, one of her generals, her second son, had deserted. Charlotte Linlin was furious and vowed to capture Chatgtp and make him understand the cost of betrayal, even if he was her son. At this moment, even the issue with Ezekiel was placed second by her because Ezekiel merely refused her invitation, which provoked her. But Chatgtp was a genuine traitor. Everyone to the sea. Find them. Big Mom shouted and sent nearly all the family members to the sea. For a while the entire sea was in turmoil, and people prayed not to cross paths with the Charlotte family. At an altitude of 10,000 meters, the air was thin, the sun dazzling, and the clouds formed a sea. A figure with long white hair appeared. Rayleigh emerged from the white sea, took a deep breath, and gazed from afar at the single piece of land. This is the island that was raised into the sky by the knock upstream hundreds of years ago. Rayleigh took out his phone and dialed a number. I finally dragged my old bones here for you after all, I'm no monster like Kato. Ezekiel's voice came over the phone. Indeed, for a man who loves crossing the sea but says he isn't a monster, you're indeed modest. In fact, if not for observation Haki, Rayleigh wouldn't have been able to find the Sky Island so quickly, located in the White Cloud Sea. He habitually swam through the sea of clouds and soon reached a huge column of water rising into the sky. An elderly lady was sitting at the gate. She seemed to be jotting something down. She had short angelic wings. Rayleigh knew this person, but several decades ago she hadn't been like this. Hey, long time no see, Amazon, haha, my boat capsized and I can only swim here myself. Amazon heard the voice ring in her ears. She slowly lifted her head and saw a man swimming in the sea. It's you. Amazon's pupils slightly narrowed, recognizing the man in the sea as one of the people who had visited Sky Island decades ago. After a moment of silence, the entrance fee is 1 billion extols per person, said Amazon. 1 billion extols, well, I remember that's equivalent to 100,000 berries. Rayleigh recalled the currency exchange rate, then patted himself to find his mobile phone. Sorry, can I pay by phone? he asked. It was quite trendy in Alabasta. This mobile payment function had just started being used by people and required an account with the Bank of Alabasta. I don't support this strange way of payment, Amazon shook her head. Could you let me pass for free? After all, we're old friends, Rayleigh asked. Yes, go on. Amazon didn't hesitate to add Rayleigh to the list of criminals, noting his appearance, a silver-haired, dreadful old man insane. Rayleigh finally passed Heaven's Gate in the White Sea, swimming along ocean currents straight into the sky, climbing another 3,000 meters, and still swimming in the sea of white clouds. The first thing he saw was Angel Island, formed from cloud-like islands. In the center of the White Sea, there is the most unique island, land that was transported into the air hundreds of years ago. Swimming a bit further, Rayleigh came ashore and noticed the stunned expression of a girl watching him. The girl had white wings, a harp in her hand, and seemed surprised that someone would suddenly emerge from the sea. Hello. Rayleigh smiled and waved, so being a kind of greeting here. Hello, I'm a tourist. Is there a mirror here? His mirror had sunk with the boat. There is. Canis was bewildered for a moment before she regained her composure. This was a guest from the blue sea, but why did he swim here? Can anyone really emerge from that ocean current alive? At this time, a group of men in white berets and uniforms was quickly approaching from afar. All of them were exceptionally tall, with small white wings on their backs, and they too were residents of Angel Island. Rayleigh laughed. Divine Guard. This group seems just as they were decades ago. I wonder if they have the same captain. Residents, attention, there is a criminal on Angel Beach. Rayleigh kept his hands in his pockets, shook off his flip-flops, his gray hair almost dry, and said with a smile. Hey, brother, I'm not some kind of rogue. The captain of the berets frowned. He got this guy looked familiar, but he couldn't recall who it was. I am McKinley, captain of the White Berets garrison. You didn't pay the entrance fee to Sky Island, and now you are fined 10 times that amount. $1 million belly. No problem, Rayleigh smiled, but first I need to find a large enough mirror, especially since the person who will pay hasn't arrived yet. I won't tolerate jokes. McKinley growled angrily. Canis hesitated slightly when she saw this scene, then turned and ran to her house on the beach. A little while later she brought back her father Pegea and a large mirror. Will this do? She asked. Rayleigh. The moment Pegea saw Rayleigh, he froze in place, and then said, I heard from my daughter that a foreigner arrived and needed help. I didn't expect it to be you. The last time Rayleigh came to Sky Island was over 20 years ago. At that time, Pegea was still a young guy. Well, I'm back, Pegea. Is he an acquaintance of yours? McKinley was stunned but then said, but you still have to pay the fine. Rayleigh waved his hand, greeted Pegea, then took out his phone, dialed a number, and said with a smile, I think you'll have to pay this fine, Your Majesty. In the next moment, the landscape in the mirror changed. Feet in elegant black shoes slowly stretched out from the mirror, stepping onto the soft beach of the White Sea. Then half the body appeared, and finally, the entire body. Canis and the others watched in shock as the mirror changed into something like a door and a handsome young man emerged from inside. On his head was a magnificent golden crown, and his presence was majestic. Is this the king? Immediately after, a blind samurai emerged from the mirror, followed by an entourage and an excitable girl, and the mirror returned to its original state. Is this Sky Island? The girl said, looking around. There was a silent pressure that immediately rose in the hearts of those around them. It was hard for everyone to lift their heads and look directly. You have illegally intruded into Skippy, and you must pay a tenfold fine. McKinley said. How much money? Ezekiel wasn't angry, he just smiled and asked. In Skippy's currency, that's 1 million belly per person, McKinley said. Are you crazy? Nami immediately became agitated like a furious rabbit, she couldn't stand such jokes. 1 million berries per person. Do you even realize how much that is? Ezekiel patted her on the shoulder. He saw no problem as long as everything could be resolved with money. If you can't pay, you are an enemy. Sorry. Even if you have friends here, McKinley slowly reached for his weapon, but before the sword was half drawn, his pupils narrowed. and he didn't notice how suddenly an old man with gray hair appeared in front of him, holding his sword, and whispered in his ear, "Young man, don't be so angry. The one before you is not someone who will allow a sword to be drawn against him." Rayleigh did not want anyone here to insult His Majesty Ezekiel out of ignorance. At this moment, Fujitora, standing to the side, gripped the hilt of his sword. Ever since he set foot on the island, he remained vigilant, sensing that someone on the island was constantly watching them. Ezekiel approached the mirror, reached into it, and quickly pulled out a large box. He slowly opened the box and placed it in front of McKinley. The box was filled with belly. "There are 4 million belly here." McKinley ordered his men to come over and take the money, then handed the guests 4 passes. Now, since the money had been given, they were no longer criminals. McKinley secretly sighed with relief and smiled. "Welcome to Sky Island." But in the next moment his face froze when he saw the guests turn and head straight towards where the Holy Land was. Wait. There exists land here that no one is allowed to step on without God's permission." Canis even broke into a sweat and tried to stop them. "This island. The land that no one is allowed to tread on, it's the island of gods. You can see it up ahead. If you go there, you'll perish." "Oh?" Ezekiel asked indifferently, still marching confidently towards that patch of land. Rayleigh, 400 years ago, this land was located in the Grand Line and was part of the island of Jaya. Ezekiel told Rayleigh, trying to explain that this land could not belong to some god of Sky Island. "I've heard about that before," Rayleigh nodded. Somewhere in the upper yard, a man with a bare torso, drums on his back, and wearing a white headband was watching the events on the island with interest. In fact, he was most intrigued by how these people appeared so suddenly. Not heeding advice. "Do you want to feel the wrath of God? Fools. You will learn what divine greatness is." Time passed, and the distance grew smaller and smaller, and Will was nearly at the meeting point of the dirt and white clouds. He stared at the ground. Many years ago, this was the land of the Grand Line. What a foolish guy, if he wishes to challenge the greatness of God. McKinley, the captain of the Berets, said with regret. Canis tried to stop Ezekiel, but Pegea grabbed her hand. "My father, they will die," she said. "Die." Pegea remembered similar people who had been so powerful more than 20 years ago. In front of everyone, Ezekiel finally stepped onto the land. At that moment, a terrifying bolt of lightning fell from the sky and struck directly at Ezekiel, who had violated the taboo. Divine punishment. At the same time, Fujitora had already drawn his sword, crouched, and thrust it straight into the ground. Gravity sword. An invisible, massive gravitational force acted on the lightning and directed it into the earth nearby, where it created a huge hole. Ezekiel remained completely unharmed, standing with both feet on the ground. He looked up at the sky. Due to the strong wind caused by the explosion, his dark clothes and hair blew upward, but the smile at the corners of his mouth grew stronger. Then he slowly turned his head and asked Rayleigh. "In that case, Alabasta has a reason to resist." Rayleigh replied. "Of course, the word is yours." Rayleigh slowly drew his sword from his belt. Fujitora smiled, drew his sword, and then stood behind Ezekiel. Nami watched the scene unfold before her. Suppose that truly is a god, but how dare he attack Ezekiel without knowing who he is? Ezekiel, Fujitora plus Rayleigh, that's a force worthy of the 4 emperors. Moreover, the guests have more in reserve. At this time, countless soldiers awaited orders in the mirror world, ready to attack Sky Island at any moment. This god has given Alabasta a perfect reason. Enel was terrified. He felt that 3 extraordinarily strong figures had suddenly stepped onto the sacred land and moreover, remained alive after his attack. "Hey, God!" A voice rang in his ears. An unprecedented feeling of panic and confusion rose in his heart. Could these people see him? And they dared to speak with him? Are they able to use his mantra? Isn't that a divine power? Boom! 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 Loud footsteps were heard. At this time, soldiers in dark uniforms emerged quickly from the mirror that Canis had previously set up, led by a man with purple hair and an icy right hand. Accompanying him was a girl with a sword on her back and an elderly man smoking a cigar. The word justice was written in white on their clothing. The number of people kept growing, and now the platoon of berets was trembling and shuddering. What kind of mirror is this? Everyone looked at Canis in astonishment, who was bewildered. She truly had no idea. Finally, a whole crowd gathered on the beach. It seemed there were at least 1,000 people. But they weren't just any people. This was a real army. As it turns out, that man truly was the king. The soldiers quickly lined up and followed the man with purple hair toward Ezekiel. As they approached, they simultaneously placed their right hands on their chests, and the man with purple hair shouted, "Your Majesty, the royal fleet of Alabasta awaits your orders." Ezekiel smiled, raised his hands high, and the soldiers joyfully cheered, welcoming him. "Alabasta! Alabasta! Alabasta!" Enel was actually a bit panicked. He called for his 4 priests, but they were still far away. What should he do? How could they block divine retribution? It was impossible. Another terrifying lightning strike roared, stronger than the first. This time, the target wasn't Will but the newly arrived soldiers. Zephyr smirked, his left hand covered in armament haki, and his fist struck directly at the lightning in the sky. Boom! The lightning was torn apart and dispersed into the air. His attack was blocked again. Enel, using mantra, caught a glimpse of Zephyr's somewhat intimidating look. Who are these people, these monsters? Now Enel was truly panicked, not because someone blocked his attack, but because they did it so easily, and they have mantra like him. The berets were trembling and speechless. Canis beamed. Regardless of who these guys were and where they came from, they actually managed to block divine retribution. Maybe these outsiders could put an end to Enel's terror. Crack. At this moment, the ground beneath Ezekiel soared into the sky, taking Fujitara and the others with him. Only the soldiers and Zephyr remained in place, as they had another task. They're flying. Canis covered her mouth with her hand. Fujitara carried them towards Enel. Although we are victims of the attack, we do not take him seriously yet, got Naomi. He's just an idiot. As soon as the piece of land reached the center of the high court, where Enel was, they heard the sound of drums. A flash of lightning suddenly transformed into a blue-white electric dragon flying in the sky, heading towards several people on the land. Thunder Dragon. Rayleigh slashed his sword downwards, and his weapon immediately struck the Thunder Dragon. The sword glowed with a faint electric light, making his hand go slightly numb. Rayleigh shivered. He's a monster. He even smashed my Thunder Dragon with a sword. How? Isn't his sword metal? And this woman is just standing there eating my favorite apples, right before my eyes. Enel's eyes widened, he couldn't comprehend what was happening. Rayleigh and Fujitara jumped down, while Ezekiel and Naomi remained on the floating rock. Let's place bets on how long this god can hold out, said Naomi, eating an apple she had somehow acquired. Ezekiel said nothing, focusing instead on Fujitara, who had already aimed his gravity sword towards Enel. In actuality, Enel is not weak. When it comes to fruit ability, he is even on par with an admiral. He is only lacking in other aspects of haki, which is a more serious issue. The thunder fruit is one of the fruits that Ezekiel wanted the most. This fruit, one might say, is the mother of industry in this world. Not only because it can manipulate and produce electricity, but more importantly, it can be used in metallurgy. Generate a lot of electricity to melt metal and shape it as desired. This ability is demonstrated by Enel in the original book. It is entirely possible that with such freedom to shape metal as desired, the Academy of Sciences could quickly establish an industrial system comparable to Earth's. The thunder fruit, when used correctly, is at least comparable to half of Vegapunk's utility. Boom. Rayleigh deflected another lightning strike with his sword and punched Enel directly in the face with his left fist. It's useless, you can't hit me, Enel said with a smirk. Smack. In the next moment, Rayleigh's fist darkened and fiercely struck Enel in the face, distorting it. Bright red blood gushed from his mouth and nose as his body spun several times in the air before hitting the ground. He was pinned to the ground by Fujitara's terrifying gravity sword, causing cracks to appear on the ground. Gravity blade, Fujitara said slowly. Damn. Enel's face was marked with bulging blue veins. Why could these guys attack him? It was impossible. Electric discharge of 200 million volts. Countless lightning bolts erupted from his body, gathering on its surface, transforming Enlil into a massive god of thunder. He suddenly stood against the gravity sword, with terrifying lightning distorting the gravity. "He is indeed strong like a monster," Rayleigh said quietly. The blade turned black and struck toward Enlil, but he raised his fist. He was sure that his 200 million volts fist could destroy everything, but this time he lost. Boom. Faced with two strong opponents at the admiral level of armament hacking, it becomes clear how pitiful Logia users can be. Initially, Enlil managed to dodge by relying on his powerful mantra ability, but resisting was becoming harder and harder. Is this guy really that strong? Nami was somewhat surprised. This was an extremely powerful Logia with super destructive lightning, and if Enlil developed the power of his fruit, it would be enough to destroy the island. Who is that? On the island, a group of people emerged from the deep jungles, arguing with a strange man flying on a Pegasus. Huh. Nami looked somewhat puzzled into the distance. What do they want? People want to see this land. The old man smiled, showing no aggression. Wiper, I've had enough. Enough with the war. A strange old man on a Pegasus slowly descended to the ground, breathing heavily, wanting to stop the fight. The man named Wiper, with tattoos on his left shoulder and left side of his face and a bare torso, said, "If you think the fight is pointless, then return to us what belongs to us. It is the wool of our ancestors." A furious crowd supported him. Ganfal sighed, looking at the Shandians. "Returning everything to you is impossible, because part of the earthly island of Jaya has become an inseparable part of the sky in the upper yard. Nothing can be done, and no one is to blame for this." Enormous anger burst from Wiper's heart. He clenched his trembling hands into fists, his nails digging into his flesh, and bright red blood trickled down his fingers, his face completely contorted. Ganfal. No one is to blame. You just want to erase past crimes. 400 years ago, the Shandian people, along with the island, were lifted from the Grand Line by the knock upstream to this place called Sky Island. Due to the appearance of soil, which exists nowhere else on Sky Island, the Shandians were expelled from their home. Since then, the Skippyans have waged a 400-year war with the Shandians. This land should belong to the Shandians. This is an indisputable fact, but the reason for the war is not so simple. As the former leader of Sky Island, Ganfal does not wish to continue the war. Therefore, he has negotiated with Wiper many times. He believes it was a mistake made by people 400 years ago. But it's impossible to return the island of God to the Shandians, in whom the residents of Sky Island believe. Ezekiel explained all the intricacies to Nami, and she suddenly became angry. These people are robbers. They stole what belongs to others. Ezekiel smiled, looking at Nami, who was so genuinely outraged by the theft. But the Shandians actually don't want the land for themselves, he added, and Nami didn't understand him. There is something valuable there, and 400 years ago they promised to protect it. Wiper, Ganfal, and the others watched these two people who suddenly fell from the sky. Could they be new invaders? Just as Ezekiel was about to begin negotiations with the residents of Sky Island, the priests, who had been far away in various places, finally gathered together. They sensed the changes in the Supreme Court and realized that someone had crossed the boundary and entered the sacred land. These people are courting death, said Sadari, one of the four priests, the priest of the trial by orbs, with a smile. It's been many years since anyone dared to do this, said Jetatsu, the priest of the trial by swamp, as he looked at the lightning that occasionally flashed. It seems there are several intruders, said Shura, the priest of the trial by string. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. Let's go to God and collect these guys' bodies, said Om coldly, the priest of the trial by iron. At that moment, a cold voice reached them. Whose bodies are you planning to collect? The four priests turned their heads and saw a group of people dressed in black clothing lined up. Dressed in the uniform of justice, they approached step by step. Leading them was a man with purple spiky hair, wearing sunglasses, and he had an icy hand. With each of his steps, a layer of ice appeared on the ground, cracking under the feet of the soldiers as if they were stepping directly on the hearts of the four priests. This guy. What is happening? How can he control ice? However, the priests did not take the threat seriously. Shura smiled coldly, looking at Zephyr and the others. It seems we have to take care of these first. Boom. He was not yet finished speaking when a cold hand pressed his head firmly to the ground, creating a massive hole in the earth. The pupils of the other three priests narrowed. Why hadn't the mantra caught this? Could this guy's speed have surpassed the limit that mantra can perceive? And what do you make of this? A cold voice resonated in their ears, and sweat began to form on their foreheads. 7 or 8 soldiers suddenly appeared right in front of them. As if they had teleported inexplicably, they hadn't even noticed. Are these people monsters? At that moment, the priest's former confidence was completely shattered, and they realized that the group before them wasn't just a bunch of weaklings they could easily handle. One of them was smoking a cigar, and suddenly a golden spark appeared in his hand. Boom. Everything around was illuminated by a blinding light. Ezekiel and Nami descended. Blue veins appeared on Wiper's forehead as he said furiously, "Do you want to rob our land too? People from the Grand Line, I advise you to take this opportunity and leave quickly," said Ganfall, glancing at the lightning that constantly flashed in the distance. Another roar of thunder echoed. No matter how strong you are, defeating Enel is impossible. Ezekiel looked at the wary people and began to speak slowly. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am the King of Alabasta from the Grand Line. The king who rules over more than 220 million people, and I do not need your land. I am not here to conquer you, I am here to establish friendship with this country on behalf of Alabasta." Everyone was in confusion and shock. King of 220 million people. This seized the attention of everyone present. What an astonishing number. The person before them has such power. And what vast lands and wealthy country must they possess with such an enormous population? Is he joking? How could such a country exist? At this moment an old leader of the Shandians stepped out from the crowd, looked at Will, and spoke slowly. "This is not our country. The ruler here is actually the god Enel, whom you have provoked. This is our people's land." Wiper roared. "I know," Ezekiel smiled and looked at Ganfall. "You are the former ruler of Sky Island, Ganfall. Now that you are here, I will make things clear. The god you fear will be defeated by Alabasta for your sake. In exchange, I only ask that you calmly hear me out." "Are you mocking us?" Wiper said, looking at him coldly. And the next instant, an unimaginably massive lightning bolt ignites the sky, and this terrifying power makes anyone believe that it's enough to destroy the entire Sky Island. "Do you see this? Look at the trouble you've caused." Ganfall was also upset. "Enel will destroy everything." At that moment, hundreds of terrifying sword horrors shot into the sky, almost instantly slicing through the lightning. How is this possible? Ganfall was shocked. He remembered a group of people more than 20 years ago. It seemed he had seen such a trick before. Gravity blade. A cry resounded, penetrating the hearts of everyone present. Countless pits formed where the thunder pillars were, sliced into countless tiny pieces of lightning that suddenly stopped and then flew in opposite directions under the astonished eyes of the people. Soon, the Shandians and Ganfall saw 2 men flying on a large rock, with one of them carrying their god, who was unconscious. "That's Enel." Ganfall was stunned. Wiper also gaped, finding it hard to believe they had actually defeated Enel. Rayleigh. The eyes of the old leader filled with tears. The moment he saw Rayleigh, his heart calmed. "So it's you." 20 years ago, they had formed a close friendship with the inhabitants of this island. If not for the appearance of Enel, perhaps the current Shandians and Skippyans would not continue the war. Fujitara and Rayleigh brought Enel to Ezekiel. Everyone was amazed by their strength and stepped back. "So, it's time to tell you a story." Using his observation haki, Ezekiel connected with everyone on the entire island. Shandians and the inhabitants of Sky Island who have been fighting for 400 years. "I am the King of Alabasta, Ezekiel Nefertari. I am the one who defeated the god Enel who ruled over you. I am not here for war, but to completely end the war here and establish lasting peace and friendship with the people of your island. Please listen to my story, the story of the great warriors Kalgra and Noland. For more fanfictions and 60+ chapters in advance, follow me on Patreon. The link is in the description below.